First game after the international break is always hard. Mikel Arteta has 2 days to train his players how to beat an offside trap from the halfway line. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right. Ange has all the Forest players lining up on the halfway line, holding that high line right on the halfway, and Mikel only has 2 days to figure out how to beat it. You know, Nico Jackson moved this summer. I'm just saying he was the man for beating that high line last time. We'll have to hope Victor Gyokeres is the man for it this time. We are going to talk about the Forest game. Of course, we are going to talk about the run of fixtures through West Ham that leads up to the next international break and kind of what we need from there. The Champions League comes back. The domestic cups are on with League Cup tie coming around. Chance to rotate some players. Hopefully a chance to get some players back. We'll talk about the latest from training. So there's a lot to get into. We're also going to start the pod with a bit on Arsenal players impressing on international duty and why that proves that they are being held back by Arsenal. I'm kidding. We're not going to, maybe we'll talk about that. I don't intend to, but if the people that I'm on with want to talk about that, well, you are more than welcome to give them your feedback, even positive feedback sometimes. I do want to let you know that Friday Night Clive will be on the Patreon and Apple tomorrow. That is at least the plan, although Clive's making a face that suggests it's not the plan, but it will be the plan to get this on Serenum, and he'll show up nonetheless. We did a Liverpool rewatch. If you've never joined us for a rewatch, I think they're really cool because there's so much narrative around these games that the narrative becomes the reality, and then there's some comp videos. But you know what's cool? You put the game on, you put it on the screen, we watch, we stop, we look at things that happen, and you notice things that, oh, with the tension of the moment, I didn't notice that, or the comp videos going around didn't highlight that, and I think it gives you an ability to really contextualize the game. Not just the positives, by the way, also the negatives, the things you didn't like, and it's always helpful. I try to rewatch games just because I'm a nervous person. I don't know if you know that about me. When I watch the game, the emotion of the moment can get to be a bit much. So it's a great way to get through that. We did an awesome pod with Scott and Clive that was cross-posted on the wonderful Canon Stats channel that Scott does, where they talked about the draws from last season and why we had the draws, the data behind it, the tactical aspects behind it, and how we eliminate draws. So you can catch that on our Patreon or on Canon Stats. And here to discuss all that and more with me is the man from Canon Stats himself, Scott. Hello, Scott.
Yeehaw! It's been a while. Yeah, how you doing?
It hasn't been a while. It's been a while on this pod, but certainly over on the other pods you've been on. In fact, just this week with Clive. And so I do want to say for the people that don't watch, Scott is in his Wyatt Earp era. He's got the Wyatt Earp mustache. He is ready to tame the Wild West, and I have to say, I think it is resplendent. I could not grow it. You're either in your Wyatt Earp era, or you need to move to Brooklyn and be pouring a stout beer from a microbrewery. One of those.
I'm just kind of leaning into being out west and feeling like a cowboy. I really probably should have gone and put my cowboy hat on and just really, leaned into it.
You know what though? I don't know that Arsenal has a cowboy hat range yet, so we'll need to get them on that. They did release new merch today, and we haven't even lost a game this week, so kudos to them. The man who's here with me now, who has changed his top because we were wearing the same one, is Clive. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. Hey, quick note. So there are 2 events happening in the United States of America if you are interested in being at them. One is the Fan Fest. NBC is putting on their Fan Fest in Kansas City. And so we're going to be down there. Paul and myself will have a little panel show that we'll have details about. There'll be some get-togethers with drinks and general revelry leading up to the City game, which will be the featured game of the weekend for NBC and that Fan Fest. So we're going to head down there and have some fun. And if you want more details on that, they'll be forthcoming, but we'd love to see you there. And Goonerpalooza, which is a name given to an event in Chicago by the Chicago Gooners, they will be hosting us for what's becoming sort of an annual tradition, a pod there. Paul lives there, so I will be joining him at his home pitch advantage, I guess he'll have, even though I will still own him on the panel. Make no mistake about that. We will be doing a panel there. We'll be watching the West Ham game, I want to say, and West Ham at home, right? Banker.
Nothing's ever
right?
bad gone on that one, right?
No, it's a great fixture. So if you want to do that, we'd love to have you there, and there'll be all events being publicized and announced around that. So looking forward to seeing people there. We're planning something for New York with Clive and maybe Andrew for the winter. So that'll be coming. And then back to Europe to do some stuff there and Union Chapel in May. So hopefully we'll hit a number of areas, having hit Singapore this summer, which is great, and just want to meet as many people as possible because, as it turns out, meeting people in real life, or IRL as it's called, turns out to be a wonderful thing. 4 minutes and 35 seconds, maybe a bit long for the intro, but I know all of you listened and none of you fast forward, and now we are going to get into the meat of the conversation. Let's start with the internationals. And I do know, by the way, there's some news that's come out about Chelsea and an FA charge. We're not going to cover it on this pod. There's a Premier League charge for them as well. We'll try to get someone on with knowledge about that and the stuff that's happened with City and roll that into what will be a fascinating legal analysis of the world of football. I have a buddy online who's a scholar, a legal scholar on this stuff, and going to see if he'd be willing to come on the pod and talk to us. So we'll see. Okay, Clive, it's been a good international break for a lot of Arsenal players, those who are fit. Anyway, first of all, I think it's the first international break in about 35 years. We haven't picked up any injuries on international break, which is good. We still have the same injuries from before. But players did well. Martin Odegaard played well for Norway. Love to see that. Victor Gyokeres, maybe not so much. We might come on to that. Noni Madueke was excellent for England and scored a beautiful goal against Serbia. Just some good performances across the board. Even Martinelli, I think, who's been down on his luck a bit at Arsenal, had a bit of a decent showing for Brazil, mixed but pretty decent. There's been some good performances. So who stood out for you? Maybe you might want to start with Noni, but who stood out for you on international break?
I love it when you answer the questions.
Maybe talk about Noni.
Yeah, I thought that Noni Madueke was quite good.
Wow, really? That's out of left field.
I think, it's quite nice to see him. I don't know if he's going to get the credit for his improvement, but he was very, very good and very strong running. And very simplistic in what he's trying to do. And I think everyone enjoys that, didn't they? What I think he has over many of the wingers that are out there is his size. He's actually quite tall and he's quite strong. And he uses his body really, really well. And I think he threatens. When you look at him, you're encouraged by what he could do, right? So he's not smooth as silk yet, but it's only going to get better, right? To quote one of Tim's lines, people start scoring when they hit 23 around that period, and that's what he is, right? So yeah, a really positive performance from him. And now we're all going to try and fit him in. So now when someone plays really, really well, we now have a problem. We don't. The other teams have a problem, and we can do what we like. And I think we need to embrace this. It's what we wanted, wasn't it? And it goes to show you, I'm not an expert on this, but there were many smart people in Scott's world that were predicting his explosion. And I think that's really smart. And it got me thinking when I started to listen and read. I thought, when you think it through, it's like, yeah, this could happen if he's in the right environment. And for all what people say about Arteta's environment, the structure allows people a base from which to play from. The principles allows people to know what to do out of possession in certain moments. So they're constantly engaged, but also have a base from which to fire from. And I think he's going to suit this environment far more than a Chelsea, I call it academy environment, where everyone's trying to impress to get selected. And I think it's different. It's like academy football when you want to get your next contract. It feels like that at Chelsea to me, rather than a constant project where you're looking at improving with the same group of players, give or take a few, right? So yeah, I'm pleased he's doing this. And we now have a player that we were writing petitions about a little while ago at the cost. And now that cost looks all right, doesn't it? Yeah, it looks all right. So things change fast.
Yeah. Yep. Scott, you, I wouldn't say are exclusively looking at football through the lens of data, but you obviously focus your emphasis on data. And I think when the initial reaction to Noni was frustration and disappointment, a lot of which I think, by the way, was related to timing and other names that we were linked with. And so it was a bit of a disappointment in that context. I do think, by the way, had we had the exact same summer and Noni was signed on deadline day, the reaction would have been very different. But that's just how these windows work, right? But you were very early to say, hey, there's something here, and to kind of recognize the qualities this player had. And since we haven't really had a chance to talk about it on the sort of main pod, I'm wondering if you can kind of rewind a little bit and give what was at the time the more bullish case for Noni Madueke that you were seeing through the lens of data, and the things about him that he had done at Chelsea that led you to believe, hang on, hold on a second here, there's a player that could really be ready to break out and be important at the Premier League level.
Yeah, the thing that really excited me about the potential Noni signing is that I think that he offered something that I think was really kind of lacking in what Arsenal had last year, and actually probably for the last couple of years. And I think that's something that when you kind of just look at the totality of the attacking signings, I think that there is a clear pattern in what Arsenal were wanting to get from this window. And I think the big thing you could say is its volume. It's volume of dribble attempts, it's volume of, running at your defender, progressive carries, just really doing that. And then on top of that, it's shots, it's key passes, it's being able to get those things that lead to end product. So one of the kind of, I guess, downsides of Noni last season is that he only had the handful of goals, 5 goals, 3 of them come in one match against Wolves. So there's a lot of people kind of poo-pooing, oh, he doesn't kind of have it. But one of the things that we've kind of learned through data, and as we're now like a decade kind of into this, is that finishing can be a little fickle. And what you're really, concerned with is being able to get chances consistently, being able to get high quality chances consistently, being able to get into good positions over and over again to be able to do that. Those are the things that lead to future goals much more predictively than, just goals by themselves. So those are the things that Noni had. It's the same thing that, you look at Eze, you look at Gyokeres. Those are players that also fit that pattern. And both of those, or all of these guys, had those things, and that's something that I think Arsenal really lacked last year. I know one of the topics that's pretty consistently out there is Arsenal not being able to create enough chances, not be able to be effective from open play, and I think that this is something that we have pretty directly addressed with the signings that we've made this year. And I think you absolutely nailed it on the head there with the timing of the signings, right? If we had switched Eze and Noni, I think the excitement about this would be, tremendously different overall for what we're able to do. And I'm just really excited to be able to kind of see people now kind of buying into it and, kind of getting some of the backing on him. And I know there was a lot of, hand wringing about some of the fees that kind of went through it, but I still strongly believe you look at the other players that moved this window. I think there's a good chance that he's going to look like a massive bargain compared to some of the other wide attackers that have moved.
Yeah, and I've always been someone who said don't buy backups, and I think that's been misunderstood slightly because I didn't mean don't have players available from the bench, don't have a squad. Mm-hmm. What I meant was don't buy Cedrics, right? Don't buy guys who have no hope to make an impact on your team long term and are there to earn a paycheck and play if things go wrong. Buy guys who are talented and hungry and going to push for a shirt and find a way to get a shirt, right? That's how you get better. Is Nani going to take Saka's shirt? Almost certainly not, but he's sure going to try, and he's going to play great when Saka's not there, and he's going to try to make a place for himself off the left, and he has the talent to be that guy and the talent to break into the team in a way where we don't lose anything from using him, right? And so when I say don't buy backups, I mean buy guys like this. Buy guys who add competition for places at an elite level. That's what you see at the teams that really thrive, right? I mean, Bradley Barcola isn't a backup, right? Bradley Barcola is a guy who's going to fight all season to take Desiree Doué's shirt. And now that Doué's injured, he's going to say, I'm not giving it back. We'll see. So that's really what you need. Clive, yep.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think conceptually you're absolutely right. But we've reached a point now with our third year in the Champions League where our ability to spend has changed. So we can change our strategy. I do think we paused last year with Edu leaving mid-season. I think we wanted to leave some money on the table for the new sporting director, so January was a bit of an issue for us. January looks an issue, but if you redress it in the summer, then we can say, okay, I know why we didn't do anything in January. But that Champions League money is a differentiator for us. And as soon as you get 3 years of it, mate, you can start to really forward plan. And what we've done with these buys, for me, this year, is literally say to the rest of the league, we're back in the Champions League again. We can kick in our own net 4 or 5 times, but we're good enough to be in that Champions League again. We can forward plan, you commit to wages. We look at Saliba and Saka's new contract. We're going to commit to it. That's not going to be cheap. We can commit to a Noni rather than work with players that maybe not so good and we're trying to manipulate them into development, into being a good player. We're literally taking the England right winger. We've got them both in our club. That tells you where we're heading. And it also tells you that some don't always come on the journey, right? So I think the Champions League has been the key, Elliot, to really change our financial investment and how we look at the squad.
Yeah, it is interesting too, by the way. And it shows you, when you talk about media narrative, and I'm only going to touch on this quickly because I know people get tired of media narrative talk, but it is generated by the Northwest media in England and by the clubs they used to play for, because for years the stick that was used to beat Arsenal is that there were no England players in the Arsenal team, that it was a foreign team. It wasn't an English team. And now the darlings are who? Liverpool. Not a single England player. Not a single English player. was in that lineup for Liverpool, I believe. But you have Saka, you have White, you have Ethan, you have Miles, you have Rice, obviously. You have Noni. You just keep going, and there's all of these England players forming the backbone of the England team at Arsenal, and it's not even really spoken about. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is spoken about. But like I said, I don't want to go too far down narrative street, but I think if that was important once upon... Well, all right, Clive. That seemed to be important once upon a time.
You got me going.
It seemed to be important.
Why do you do this?
And by the way, I'll just say this. I was always of the opinion, I thought, maybe the reason it felt like we didn't get calls or it felt like things didn't go for us is that we didn't have that English connection in our team, right? And so I'm not saying that's okay, but maybe that was an explanation. But now, we'll see, right? Because Liverpool are certainly not supporting English talent in the way that we were told we needed to. So I don't know. You free swim, Clive. Go for it.
Yeah, see Scott. See what he does to me, Scott. I'm sitting here quietly, calming, and he gets me going. Well, so
Clive, what is with the media and this bias against Arsenal and the England players?
It's selective bias, right? So back in the day when we get our legs broken by Stoke, etc., we were seen as the first foreign team in the Premier League, basically. The first team to basically have a team of foreigners, etc., with our foreign manager trying to tell everyone how to play football and eat broccoli. We need to sort them not out, right? We need to sort them out. Alex got his mates, Big Sam and co. Let's get stuck into them. That was the way to sort of define Arsenal back then. Then we come to the end of that era and we come into a new era. So now we have our intense Spanish manager with his Pep ways, right? That was the first thing he got criticised for being a baby Pep, right? So copying his tactics. Now he's diversified into something else. Well, he's Jose Mourinho football now, right? Because now he's focusing on defence. But now he has set pieces. So he's Tony Pulis football now. So now, right now, we are sitting there as a team which does long throws, corners, defends well, does set pieces well, got half the team is English, and yet we still get the stick, get put into places. It's selective, and what this manager's doing, whether you like him or not, that's your personal choice. He is making this team adaptable to every facet of the game, and he is not disrespecting any single action in the game. And it's quite interesting to see Thomas Tuchel talk about this as well. Why would you not use something that puts the ball into an area where you might score from? Just tell me why you wouldn't in this environment, and we'll wake up soon. And football is cyclical, and it will wake up soon. In the end, we've got to be less sensitive, myself included, less sensitive about some of this, and just focus on winning. Because when you win, you can set the narrative. And we're not winning at the moment. So Liverpool can set the narrative because they have the trophy. So,
yeah, I think that's right. Look, I don't want to go much further on this, but I do think it's funny. As an Arsenal fan, not from England, I still find myself connected to English football through my love of Arsenal. And so I do somehow weirdly take pride in there being English players in the Arsenal team and seeing them play for England. And maybe it's because I naively think that will influence how Arsenal are spoken about in the media and how Arsenal are treated on the pitch. As yet, hasn't seemed to be the case. So we'll just keep an eye on that. Scott, Martin Odegaard had a good international break. There is, I think, some frustration at, he can't play for Arsenal, but he can play for Norway. It's last season all over again, yada, yada, yada. But when a player isn't at the peak of their powers, sometimes I think going off on international duty, getting away from the rough and tumble of the Premier League, getting a feel for having the ball in a little more space with a little more time and getting your football up to the level you want it to be at can be a good thing. And one thing that I kind of started to wonder about, I'm curious your take on this. Martin Odegaard playing with Erling Haaland. There were some sensational through balls from deep midfield into Haaland running in behind. And it just so happens that we now have a striker who makes those kind of runs. He's not Haaland, of course, but he does similar kinds of actions. Do you think that training with Haaland for a couple of weeks, playing Haaland in behind the line, especially with Ange's team coming up, even if they've only had a few days to train together, do you think that can help Martin just further develop the skills and the understanding that he needs to wind up working with Gyokeres more effectively?
I hope so. And I think that it's unfortunate that the Liverpool game kind of came at the time that it did, because I think if it comes 2 or 3 days later, I think Odegaard probably is recovered enough to start. Because you kind of look at, how he did, right? He played 45 minutes against Finland, and I think that was, a nice little tune-up to get him ready for this one. And so this is actually potentially a good kind of international break for him to, be able to get a bit of that training and some minutes back into him after the shoulder injury to be able to do it. And yeah, you're right. That one ball that he plays, what's that, like right about the halfway line, and it's that perfect little bend right between, as
curling through ball. Yeah,
right. We've seen a few of those, right,
yeah.
From him, where he has that nice bend on it. So I think it is just a matter of both of them kind of getting comfortable with each other. Realizing when he needs to make the run, when Odegaard needs to realize when he's making that run and release the pass correctly. Right, because it's like we saw, like as soon as he came on against Liverpool, he had that real nice little reverse ball after the Eze combination to be able to do it. So it's like, I think that he wants to be able to play with him. Even some of the ones against Manchester United, like there was a little bit of those not quite right to be able to do it. So I think it's just a little bit of time, and maybe this time with Haaland we'll be able to get him, kind of in that mindset and being able to come into it. So I'm hopeful, and I am really interested to see what changes with Nottingham Forest this weekend. You talk about coaches that are like diametrically opposed. Like I don't think you can get further apart between Nuno and Ange.
Yeah, and in terms of the kind of talent you have at your disposal, Ange certainly does not have the players to play the way he wants to play. So we'll pivot into that momentarily. Clive, just before we move off the internationals, any other performances that stood out to you? I mean, one that unfortunately I think veers more towards the less impressive side would be Gyokeres, who I don't think impressed particularly in what was not a good international break for Sweden overall, from a results standpoint and a performance standpoint. I watched some of his games and I watched some of the highlights going around, and it's weird because for a player whose running looked so powerful and quick, not just in Portugal, by the way, if people want to be like, oh, that's Portugal, but in the Champions League as well. It doesn't look like that currently to me. And maybe I'm just seeing that because the end result isn't coming off yet.
Yeah.
There is sometimes a thing that happens in the social media era where tiny little issues get talked about so much that they feel like big issues. I have no concerns yet on Gyokeres. The one game we played where we played well as a group, he played well, scored a brilliant solo goal. I'm not concerned, but I do have to say from an eye test standpoint, he doesn't look like his movement is as powerful and explosive as I saw it when we scouted him, when we saw him at Sporting. So any thoughts on how he looked for Sweden and overall where he is with his game?
Yeah, I saw some of the Swedish clips, and some of them look really bad. Some of them look really quite good. So it depends which failed comp you watched. Do you know what I mean? And let's be honest, and that's what people do, and take their opinions from that. So I didn't watch the whole game, so I don't know how he played. So when I look at Gyokeres, just broadening the subject out a little bit, this is where my challenge is for my own brain when I watch him. We're a team that's quite collective in how we play. So I often say the words, we almost play with 11 midfielders, including our goalkeeper, right? So we move the ball, we can control the ball in different areas, and we're very collective. And I'm used to Havertz, Merino, even Jesus. I mean, they could all play in midfield. They could all play. Jesus can play in the wing. Havertz has played in the wing. Havertz played left back. So you've got this all-round collective football philosophy. And I've grown used to it. Then you get a bloke that's an absolute individual, that is focused on one thing. And we haven't had that for a while. So even Aubameyang played on the left wing, because he could carry and sprint in behind. So we've got somebody, just a goal scorer. So now, not just my eyes, but everyone's eyes, got to go from the collective to the individual. Now, when you got Erling Haaland, you go from the collective to the individual, and the individual scores 40 goals. You invest in that individual. Erling Haaland, when he arrived, was 2 yards quicker than Gyokeres. And I did see the Champions League numbers last year on pace. When I'm potting with Scott, I've got to be careful with my numbers game, right? So, but he's in the top, I think it's top 2, top 3 for striker speed. Right, so it's there. It's just not there at the moment. It's there. We've seen it. We've seen it ourselves, Elliot, live against Lieber and Gabriel, and they were on their toes, mate, to manage him. So he doesn't look quite as sharp as that, and we can probably explain that away. But I do think the greater challenge is to go from the collective to the individual and really invest in him and trust him to get to that end result. So I think this is going to be an issue for us, and we haven't got it right yet as a group, and he's not right yet as a group. One game can change that. As soon as your eyes see him moving, you go, oh, I wasn't worried. I knew he'd get there. Do you know what I mean? I do think it is about movement, and I do think it is about hold-up play. So you can be a part of the collective. What I do like about him is he's buying fouls nicely in some of the games, particularly away games that I've seen from centre-backs, and he's a presence, and people are having to mark him. You know, and Liverpool did it until they didn't, right? And we should have adjusted. Manchester United did it, we're strong on him. They're having to mark him, and we haven't quite seen that advantage in the wide areas yet because our top boy's not there. On the left-hand side, we'd have been indifferent in form. But that will change. And I think if we get back to a collective strike force, I think with him involved, I think we'll all relax a little bit more.
Yeah. I think in some instances, and this goes back to something we mentioned before, the only right way to analyze something is to almost not analyze it and say it's too soon.
Just
right?
wait.
And just wait. I mean, if you look at it, 3 strikers prominently came into the Premier League in the summer. Sesko, who's basically not even getting on the pitch. Ekitike, who's similar to Gyokeres, has a couple goals, but I don't think has fully impressed, especially in some of the bigger games like against Newcastle and against Arsenal. And Gyokeres, who, again, good game against Leeds, 2 tough games where he didn't necessarily perform at his best. Just feels too soon, even if people want to make those immediate judgments. Scott, one last thing. Declan Rice.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely the case that when we see the physique of a player or we see the way they move or things about them, we just put them into boxes of the kind of players they are. And Declan Rice is one of those players I feel like I'm constantly learning about. And I had this weird thought over the international break that Declan Rice has a unique engine, a unique recovery ability. Clive and I rewatched the first half of the Liverpool game, as I mentioned, and some of his recovery running was incredible. Then I watch him for England, and I'm like, he's Beckham. Yeah, he's David Beckham. I mean, the delivery from set pieces is that good. And so we continue to try to learn about this player, and people want to put him in a box of what he should be, and he just constantly breaks out of that box by bringing different things to his game. So any thoughts on Declan Rice as a misunderstood player, and when you see him for England, what you think he provides? Because as a last point on this, when I watch England, the one thing I think they desperately need is someone who sits at the base of midfield and can progress the ball a bit. But then when it's not Rice, somehow it's Rice's fault that he's not doing that when he's doing so many other things well, you know?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that I'm constantly impressed with Rice. And I think that's something, you kind of came in when he's at West Ham. It's like, oh, he's a world-class DM to be able to do all of those types of things, play deeper, disrupt the game, really kind of, be able to give you a little bit of box-to-box kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I had it in my, bingo card that he's going to turn into what he's turned into for Arsenal. And I think, again, like you get kind of pigeonholed into like certain stereotypes that kind of go with a player. You see a guy that, is kind of that classic English bulldog, and you kind of don't associate that with a technical level. And some of the ball striking that he has is up there with the best, right? Like the delivery that he can put on not just a set play, but, some of the long passes, the switches, these are not kind of like, I always remember like Wayne Rooney loved to do a big switch, but the big like Wayne Rooney switch was this high floated ball and it looked pretty. You got the, the applause from the crowd and everything like that, but the fullback was able to get over pretty quickly and it really wasn't that effective.
That Wayne Rooney is shit, mate.
Yeah. But when Declan Rice does it, man, that ball is delivered like a laser. Yep. And that ball is out there, and he gives his winger a chance to get that step early on his man out there. And I think that's one of the things I think like you don't really expect that from when you're thinking about like the stereotype of what Declan Rice kind of is and what you kind of build that into, right? Oh, this guy is a former center back, he moved into DM, and it's like, no, this guy is just an all-around great footballer and what he's able to do. And I don't know, I'm constantly reevaluating and kind of changing what I'm seeing after what he's able to do on the field overall, right? I think something that's really kind of improved, and I think this is something that you see in a lot of great players, is that, after a summer, you kind of start to see changes. You can see exactly what they worked on that summer to get better for the coming season. Yeah. And this is something that, you kind of see a lot in basketball. Young players, all right, I'm gonna go work on these skills, and they transfer it over. And I think there's something very similar with that with Rice. I think, the summer before, the 23-24 to 24-25 season, really kind of concentrating on, the work that he's doing in and around the box. And you could see those instincts start to become a little bit more natural to be able to kind of understand the spaces he's needing to be in. He still has the great ability to cover acres of space and to be able to do it. And he's really just evolving into just an all-around really good midfielder.
Yeah. And what makes him special, obviously, is the ability to play in any zone of the pitch and influence it in a positive way, which is a really unique trait that he has, and I'm sure one that Mikel Arteta is very happy to have, and we're very lucky to have him. I think it is natural when you have elite talent to want to constantly be reinventing where they, we're even doing it with Saka, right? Where can they influence? Saka could move to 8, he could move inside, and then we could play Noni on the right, and that kind of mentality is natural. I think it's a FIFA mindset, because I'll admit I don't play FIFA as much as I once did, but when I did, how would I set my lineup? I'd put all the fun players on, right? I'd have every attacking player on and no defenders, and that worked just as well in FIFA as it would in real football. Let's shift gears to the Forest game, though. I think we want to put the international break in the rearview mirror, and we'll talk about the run to the next international break after we specifically talk about the Forest game. But Clive, this is an interesting one. Just to set the stage, Forest have not gotten off to a good season. They've sacked their manager. They've brought in a manager that people probably have some big doubts about themselves. His style, as Scott referenced, could not be more diametrically opposed to the style of the manager they just got rid of and the talent that they currently have. Alexander Zinchenko will not be able to play. He's barred from playing because of the loan, although I'd be fine if they want to play him at fullback against Noni Madueke, candidly. I think we have some sense of how that could go.
Yeah, can we get a special disposition to waive that rule?
Yeah, we'll just waive it for this one game. Elanga's no longer there, a player that used to obviously cause a lot of havoc in the past. This is a club in a really weird state, and they come to the Emirates at a time when I think everybody will be hoping for a big performance to kick off another big run of fixtures. So what are your thoughts leading into this game and Forest's situation as they arrive at the Emirates?
Yeah, the West Ham game, we've had to talk about Liverpool for 2 weeks. That was a 1-0 defeat of an 81st minute long shot, right? We can debate it. It was heavy, but mate, to lose 3-0 at home to West Ham, that's quite traumatic. West Ham that are not in a great place. And West Ham scored 3 quite late goals and beat them well. And so,
imagine losing at home to West Ham. Like, that is terrible. You can't do that.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
Yeah, right. That's going to get flipped up, isn't it? So, but the way they lost was quite bad. And where West Ham are in their confidence. So what are they at the moment? So they were very, very direct under Nuno. Nuno, I'm a fan of him, always have been. I thought Tottenham treated him badly. I don't know, he's gone to Forest, but Forest now seem to treat him badly. I think data-wise, I read somewhere, Scott, that maybe Forest were not quite as good as what people thought they were, And so we get excited about what they, because they've got great home ground performances there, and they've got good atmosphere, and our press like that, that environment, etc. And they lean into it, something new in the Premier League, and they spent a lot of money, and they're showing people how to stay up, and they stayed up despite having points deducted, etc. So very interesting club, with a very, very interesting owner, and I think that ownership has caused a problem potentially with Edu arriving in that upward management relationship. So what are we going to get? So we walk into the unknown, really, But sometimes I've heard you use the word, Elliot, well, I heard Tim use the word disruptor. I think they're a disruptor for the Premier League. And I think sometimes when that happens, you just have to sit back and say, okay, how are they doing this? What are they doing? This guy's got different ambitions to what maybe we're used to. He's got a multi-club model. How's that going to affect what he's doing here? I think it's interesting, that club. I don't put them into a place like we do sometimes here in England. Well, they're just bad. They're a club we should hate. There are problems with Crystal Palace and the Europa League versus Europa Conference League. They are here, and they don't intend to go away. And they're going to build their infrastructure, build their ground, no doubt. And they're going to do things. And I find them interesting. And how they go about it, I think this summer's not been great from my eye, from a player. But the things I can talk about quite, hopefully, cogently is about players. And I watched England 21s in the summer, trying to fit in Amari Hutchinson, McAtee, Wanyeri, Harvey Elliott, all these little lefties had to fit him in, and they couldn't fit him in. Hudson had to go to the left wing, Ethan had to go to the bench, and eventually found a balance. I don't expect a team to buy two of those players, in Hutchison and McAtee, when there are other players like El Canous available, which Nuno wanted, wasn't allowed to get, which would have given them a left-right balance. When I start to see that stuff, you wonder who's in charge. Who's in charge? Who's making these decisions? As soon as you get that situation, mate, you might as well sit down in a room, speak to the agent, speak to the club and say, how much money am I going to get? Because it's time to go. Do you know what I mean? And that seems to knows what happened. And within 24 hours, Ange is there. And then you look at this and you think, look at their relationship with the owner, Marinakis, and it's football, mate. I mean, it really is. And so we now have the new manager bounce syndrome on Saturday morning. I'm hoping we just deal with them really, really quickly. And they can go on and reshape themselves going forward. And Ange will hopefully be focusing on the Europa League trophy, which is his own now.
Yeah, I want to get in the lineup and how we play and our expectations, but just one final thing, Scott, because you referenced it and I think it is relevant, the new manager bounce concept. I get it, because it's usually a team that's in the doldrums, losing an unpopular manager, feeling like a weight's been lifted, and now they can, show their stuff to the new manager and it reinvigorates everyone. But I don't get the sense the players didn't like Nuno. That's not really what I get transmitted. I get the sense that it's a club in crisis, that Edu's come and swung a wrecking ball and brought Kia in, and the owner creates a really challenging environment and threatening environment for everyone. He doesn't let players make moves who I think candidly wanted to make moves, and then they have to show up to the media and say, no, I never wanted to move. And there's a very weird environment. And so I think that their challenges are based on, first of all, just a little reversion to the mean, so to speak, because the data, as Clive referenced, showed that they weren't an elite team last season. They somewhat outperformed with their counterattacking style. They've lost some of the keys to being able to counterattack as effectively as they did. I think Elanga was really, really important for that, for what it's worth, with his speed to turn defense into attack very quickly. This isn't a case where I think, you get rid of a manager the players hated and they're reinvigorated. I think this is a case of a club that's in a bit of a mess, and now they get a manager who's going to want them to do things that are totally different and unnatural. So could be famous last words, but it doesn't feel like new manager bounce territory, especially going away from home in a very big game, coming off an international break where candidly they will have had, I guess, more players back to train than big clubs do, but
I think I read somewhere they had still 14 guys out on international break, so still a pretty healthy amount.
So players coming back to a new guy they don't know, to a chaotic situation, to go away to a tough ground. And I think this is the thing. You get a 1-0 lead and you win this 7-0, because this is a team that I think if they feel like their tails are up, maybe they'll think it's a new era for us. But with the chaos that's going on around them, if they feel like they're already behind, I could see them kind of throwing in the towel. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Do you see a new manager bounce situation developing here?
I think a lot of just being very, cold calculating on this, a lot of what I see as new manager bounce is that when a manager tends to get fired, it's usually after a situation where they probably played poorly, but you also will see a player or a team perform worse than kind of their underlying numbers are, right? That's usually when you kind of pull the plug, this has become untenable to be able to do it. So just changing a manager can be a situation to, sometimes it's noise, sometimes it's randomness, but it just bring you back to, your kind of level. So having a little bit of that general reversion to the mean kind of thing. But I'm not sure that's necessarily the case here with Nottingham Forest. Like you pointed out, this isn't a team that is playing poorly per se to be able to do it, or that is not the reason that incited why this change is made, right? It seems like this is a kind of a battle of kind of super agents. Nuno is a Jorge Mendes guy, Kia, and then we have Kia Drapkin, which is, tied with Edu, and that maybe is kind of it. There's a weird kind of feud, with Marinakis, and Nuno's comments on him earlier were not something that you normally hear from a manager overall to be able to see. And I think then there's also the thoughts on, Forest, how they're viewed. They went from, I think, kind of underrated at the start of last season. You kind of looked at, the end of the 23-24 season, and they were on a nice upward trajectory, really kind of starting to come together quite well. And I was pretty high on them coming into last season. Actually made a few bets on that to be able to kind of get ahead of that. And then it kind of, as they moved, further and further up the table, went from underrated to overrated. And yeah, that's the one where I think now they are in that overrated spot. But that doesn't mean that they didn't improve under Nuno. They went from a team that I thought was borderline relegation candidate level to pretty solidly like upper mid-table, right? If they had kind of like maybe performed, maybe not so hot at the very beginning, and like the results were a little bit more spread out, versus the collapse kind of at the end. Like I think somewhere between 7th and 9th would have been absolutely fair for them, and that is a really good kind of view for a team that not too long ago was right on the cusp of battling out relegation. That is quite a bit of improvement overall for them. I just come into this match and I'm like, what is going to happen here? So I pulled up a metric and I'm going to tweet it out later. Just it's a what I call the style kind of comparison here. And it kind of looks at things that are really kind of tied to how teams play. So you're going to look at, like the speed towards play and, how many passes they're going to have per possession and where on the field they're playing and how they get into the box and being able to do it. And I compared Forest and Spurs.
Okay.
And it is really like, it's hard to like overstate this, but it's like, there are not two teams that are absolutely different in how they played overall last year. Even Spurs not being good last year under Ange still were massively different. So like the difference in possession, Forest were by far the lowest possession team. They had the lowest passing volume. They really were the fastest directly up the field. And I think that really kind of matches and, kind of thought about how they built their team. The defenders,
that's the eye test,
right?
Yeah.
Sat back and it's 1-2 passes and we're in your box. We're trying to attack you. And that is not the way that Ange plays. Ange is much more of we're going to build from the back. We're trying to draw you out. We're trying to get that. We want to control the ball much more, I guess, of like, the big club kind of view of how you play. And like, is he going to try to lean into that now? Like, can he get his players to do that after 2-3 training sessions to be able to do that? Does he have the players that like, this is more of a talent advantage type of system overall? And I mean, Nottingham Forest have invested quite a bit, but I don't think that for the vast majority of their matches, they're going to have that big talent advantage to where maybe this strategy plays out. And I'm just really interested to see if he changes to suit the talent or if he tries to make the talent suit his, his view of how football should be played.
If he hits the "it's just who we are, mate" approach again, they're going to get slaughtered a lot. And it's going to be such an interesting litmus test on Ange as a manager capable of growth and development, because there may be a future where Forrest can play his style of football, but that future isn't today. And I am praying to whatever you want to pray to, that he tries to get them to do a little more of his thing after 2 training sessions, because it'll be a very easy day for us. I do want to switch the focus to us, though. I want to switch the focus to our lineup, to our tactics, to our injuries, to availability, and then to the period that's coming up between now and the West Ham game, because obviously a very crucial point acquisition period we are going to enter, not to mention the cups are starting to come around. It would be weird to talk about the lineup. Not just weird. I think it would be a dereliction of duty. And I do not want to be derelict in my duty if we talked about lineups without talking about your e-commerce store. What would even be the point? Oh, talk about lineups. You haven't told me one thing about how to build an e-commerce store. See, that wouldn't be right. But we're not going to do that because we're going to tell you about Shopify. Shopify is the platform where you can build the perfect professional e-commerce site that makes people want to buy the things you love and make and want to share with the world. And that's the whole thing, right? You don't want to be an expert in e-commerce and web design and engineering. I mean, maybe if you're like Scott, you might want to, but most people don't want to. And that holds them back to say, I could never start a business because I don't know anything about e-commerce. With Shopify, you don't have to know. Fortune 500 companies use Shopify to build their e-commerce. It is click and drag, simple. You write a description of your product, you post a picture, and you set the price. That's it. Now, what about cart optimization or taxes or shipping? It takes care of that. How do I also sell on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok? It takes care of that. So you've got the product. That's the thing you love and you care about. Let Shopify take care of the rest. And how does this sound? A $1 per month trial period. Well, you can get that. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/RSNVision ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase, to start selling on Shopify today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Do it now, in. This is an advertisement from BetterHelp. I would have thought that'd be obvious from the fact that I'm about to start talking about BetterHelp, but I have to say that nonetheless. Look, therapy is important. You should do therapy. It is really that simple. Life is not meant to be lived on your own. And in the age of social media and the ugliness that you can come in contact with, your mental health is under attack more than ever before. I find that I am blessed to have a pretty good life. I have 2 daughters I love. I have friendships that support me. I have a partner in my life who I love. And I still find myself under distress emotionally because I take things in and I take negative energy in that I come in contact with, and it affects me. And for all of the things that I feel privileged and blessed to have in my life, I still need help working through those things that affect me. And I know many people don't have the same privileges and could use the help and find it hard to get the help they need. And if you can go sit in an office with a therapist, I strongly recommend it. But if that's not an option because of cost or resources or access or drive time or whatever it is, BetterHelp is therapy. It's just online. You can do it from home. You can match with a therapist that fits what you need. You can go camera off if you need to get into it kind of easily and slowly before you feel totally comfortable. It's just this simple. Find a way to do therapy. If it's some other way, fine. But BetterHelp makes it accessible. And we have an opportunity for you to do that. With over 5 million supported to date globally, BetterHelp is now available in the UK with thousands of counselors who have expertise in a wide range of specialties. With a 4.9 out of 5 rating based on over 1.7 million client reviews, BetterHelp makes counseling affordable and convenient, and you can switch counselors at any time for no cost. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/vision. It's betterhelp, HELP.com/vision. Do it now. And I will simply say, if you are struggling, tell someone. Even the people we think are doing great are struggling. I am struggling. There are things that are hard to deal with. So setting aside the advertisement and the promotion, just being serious for a minute, if you're struggling, tell someone. Send us an email. Get in touch with someone and say, I'm struggling. And there are people out there that want to help, that will help, that love you and care about you. And, I just think it's incumbent upon us all as a community of people who are thoughtful and caring to know that there are people that love you and care about you and want to see you be okay? So sorry to bring that up, but I just feel sometimes there are moments when that is needed. And sometimes there are moments when you need to watch a video, but it's geo-locked. And when those moments come, what a segue, Elliot. When those moments come, you need NordVPN. NordVPN is an app. You put it on your phone, you put it on your tablet, put it on your computer. You click a button and you can browse wherever you want to browse. And that means you can see those fail comps, or hopefully in the case of Arsenal, those success comps, and you can watch them and you can love them. And you can say, we have the best players. We're going to win all the trophies. You can watch the match reviews of the day show. You can watch streaming sites that aren't available in your area, and you get threat protection. So if you're on a dodgy stream, and I'm not saying be on a dodgy stream, but if you're on a dodgy stream, you can watch that with complete confidence. NordVPN is going to give you a huge discount off your plan, plus 4 bonus months on top and a 30-day risk-free trial. You can put it on any device you want. It is click simple. I use it all the time to watch geolock videos. I just watched one the other day. What was I watching? It was an ITV video, I want to say. Oh, it's the England game. It was the Noni Madueke goal in the England game. So there you go. So, and anyway, I was watching ATV, not the one I said before, some made up one that isn't real. Anyway, more of the story is Nord gives you a great deal. And all you have to do is go to NordVPN.com. What is it? Is it .com/ArsenalVision or is it promo code ArsenalVision? NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision, NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision, NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. So enough of that.
Indeed.
Nailed it. And again, apologies for the authentic sincerity in the midst of all that nonsense. But I think every once in a while it's good to stop and let people know that we're all human beings. We all care about each other, because it doesn't always feel that way all the time. Clive, lineup. Who starts? Who plays? What are the injuries? How many will we lose to injury in this very game? 3, 4, 7, 11? What would you do? And let's assume we haven't seen Saka in training. We haven't seen Saliba in training. Let's assume this game comes too soon for them. How do you want the manager to line up, and what do you think he'll do?
Yeah, it's a 3-game week. I know Scott doesn't like that term, 3-game week. I'll have to find the right term.
How many games can you play in a week?
I got to find the right term that satisfies him.
I just got to stop you for a second, Clive. I'm sorry. I got to. Look this up if you've never come in contact with it. How many workouts in a 7-day period? John Boyce, I think is his name, did a video about it, but there's multiple videos. There was a thread on a chat room for like muscle bound fitness people. Yeah. What was it called?
I think it's bodybuilding.com from way
on
back in the forum days.
There's a chat where people got into like a 48-hour fight about how many workouts can actually be fit into a 7-day period based on if you worked out every other day or something like that, or 4 days a week. So it is absolutely hilarious. It by far exceeds that he's 28 until he's 29 or he's 29 until he's 30. That's how this works. So please look it up. You will be glad you did.
Maybe you
anyway,
have to link the video.
you know what? I'll put a link to the video, the YouTube video that is, in my mind, an absolute instant classic. So, Clive, that's probably more important than what you were going to say, but please, back to you.
Well, we have a 3-game week, and the first one is
there you go.
The first one is Forest on the Saturday morning, and then we go to Bilbao, and then we got Man City. So you can't help but start to look at games in threes now, and you would do, wouldn't you? And if there's an issue with a player, you're going to think, okay, I'm not going to risk him because I've got another one a couple of days later. So the Forest team, if I name this team, just name it, probably everyone's going to agree, right? So it's going to be Timber, Calafiori, Mosquera, Gabriel, Rice, Zubimendi, Odegaard, Madueke, Gyokeres, Eze. That's the fan team, right? That's the team we all want to see. But I wonder what Mikel will do, given the fact we have got Bilbao and get off to a good start, and we've got Man City. So you have to think about 3 games. You have to think about what people have done during the international break. Noni's had 2 strong games. I'm not saying they're the hardest games in the world, but he's played for England a couple of times. So I think he should ride the wave for me. Particularly as Saka's coming back quite quickly, hopefully, maybe for City. Saliba potentially for City as well. So maybe even in the week, you just don't know, right, where they are. Ben White back in the group, that'll help a lot because Timbers at the moment looks like a 75-minute player at the moment. And it'd be great if they can be at the rotation there to make sure they last. The same at left-back situation, just because Calafiori seems to have a few games in a row. Let's remember who he is. He's only a slip away from being out for 3 months, right? So, so to make sure we share the time there. And by the way, we have a new left-back to think about, right? Who we haven't even seen a training picture yet as at time of recording, but it's no doubt will be released shortly. And
there's some comps of his international duty from this week.
I'm about to say he can play football. This is somebody that's known to many people. This isn't a surprise. He can play. He's sharp. He's aggressive. He's quick. Looks after the ball. He's quite dynamic. Bounces into the last third. All the stuff that we all like. And we all know Arsenal defending now, we need people comfortable man for man. Right? On their own. Not bothered. You know? So he fits what we're used to. So we've got 4 lefties, 4 righties. We're looking really good back there, aren't we? Really good. So it'll be interesting to see how he divvies up the games. And this is going to be the challenge in this first phase of the season. But that's a team I'd pick, Elliot. I mean, I don't like first 11s, but if I don't see that when I go into the game on Saturday morning, there'd be riots.
Yeah, fair. Totally fair. And by the way, Scott, we didn't mention it in our international break section at the top of the pod because we talked about it at length, which I know you were frustrated by, on I think it was the Monday pod. No harm, no foul. But that's Mikel Merino, who did have a hat trick for Spain, who has looked good for Spain, who was picked to start against Liverpool. And Clive and I talked about this on the rewatch. There's a small little teeny tiny part of me that thinks Martin Odegaard could have started at Liverpool. That was a pain tolerance injury, not a how you can play injury. You get the injection, you can play. If you can play for 25 minutes on a shoulder that hurts, you can play 70 minutes, in my view. So maybe it was a case of Mikel Merino was picked because he thought he was the best option for that game. But I wonder, Mikel Merino coming off the performance he just had, is he going to be a player that Mikel looks at and says, I want those goals on the pitch? Does he have a shout for getting into this lineup, or is that overthinking it?
I mean, so I talked about, I before the Liverpool game, I kind of kind of offhandedly, but kind of seriously, said that this kind of seemed like a Mikel Merino game. You kind of looked at what Liverpool had struggled with in the 2 matches preceding playing Arsenal, and it was some of the physicality in midfield, and to be able to do that. I think the option of being able to have his dual winning, especially considering that, Gyokeres is not, the greatest kind of hold-up player to be able to do that, to have an option if Liverpool came onto us to play over their press to be able to do that. I think that is a type of thing that suited Mikel Merino, and I think that was kind of my thought for why you might choose him for this game, especially the addition of, he does have I don't always love his game in the middle third, but I'm really impressed with some of his play in the final third. It's kind of crazy that a player that has such great kind of combination and like a deft touch, like kind of like on the edge of the box, can kind of look so kind of slow when he's like in the defensive third or the middle third. And it's a similar kind of thing, right? He receives kind of back to goal, but sometimes his turning in the middle third isn't nearly as good as kind of what you would hope it to be. And I think that is something that when you're going to play a team like Liverpool, maybe suits his strength a little bit more. So I think this is a game where, again, like if this was a Nuno game or a Nuno was the manager here, I think it's very clearly this is a, Martin Odegaard. We need a little bit more of the creativity. We need to unpick the lock to be able to do it. Even with Ange, maybe, right? It's a player we need who can play that through ball to be able to kind of see it, to be able to get onto our players. Yes, I kind of lean that I do think it is probably Odegaard, but I like the option and seeing him, right? He played on the right-hand side again for Spain, to be able to maybe kind of come into this as an option. And again, playing 3 times this week, being able to think about, all right, maybe Odegaard gives us 60, 70 minutes here. And, maybe then we can, rest, rotate to be able to do it. Because looking at the schedule, this is something that I think that Arteta is going to have to be more mindful of, because if Arsenal advance in the League Cup, which I think we all expect to do with our overall squad size and quality and depth for it, it's going to be twice a week all the way through Christmas Eve. That is the first time that Arsenal will not play twice a week, not counting the international breaks. So we are needing to use the full squad. We are going to have to see these players. We're going to have to see sharing of minutes. We're going to have to be comfortable seeing, 3 or 4 changes kind of coming in and out from the Champions League.
And you're going to see a bit of what Mikel prioritizes by the lineups he picks weekdays versus weekends, and how he thinks about how he wants to use what's available to him. Clive, it's I think a winnable midweek game. One against an opponent we know from preseason, although preseason is not the real season, but an opponent that I think we can handle. So I don't think we have to pick this lineup with an eye towards midweek, but I do think we might have an eye towards what follows, which is Manchester City and then Newcastle away. I think this is a game where you pick a lineup to get into form with the lineup that you're going to want to use in those 2 games. That's my thought. We need to feel really good about our ability to play with this group. Now, obviously, Saliba you'd want in the group against City, and you'd want Saka in the group against City. But do you agree that you've got to pick the strongest group available for this game, because you really want to start to get into some kind of rhythm and form with that group for those 2 games ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you lose a game, next game's the most important thing. Next game is always the most important thing. But it certainly is when you lose away in front of the world. This is the big game in the league. It's way too early for both teams, by the way, but it's a big game in the league. And we lost, right? So we've had 2 weeks of gnashing our teeth, and now we've got a home game. So we can almost more or less kick off the Premier League weekend. Mate, dropping points in this game is not an option, right? It is not an option. And so you don't look ahead. You take this game on, and you maybe change things towards the end of the game if you're able to do so. Midweek is still Champions League. It's money, points, important, right? So you've got more options to recover, but you need to start well. Then we have a bit of time. I think City, for some strange reason, they play on the Thursday. They play Napoli at home on the Thursday. Scott's nodding. I always like when Scott's on, because I get confirmation.
This is what we had with the Inter before we played them, right? We played the Thursday game before we had to go. Yeah, so
exactly.
So Arsenal get that nice advantage. And we have the Tuesday early game. So we have that, a few even more extra hours.
Exactly. Get your legs up after that. Get back early. And we can sit there and watch them on Thursday. And then they've got to come back and then come to us on the Sunday. So I think just getting this Forest game done sets us up for a week. If we can get a 3 wins, that's really, really positive. Because then I've got Newcastle in my eyes, really. Obviously Port Vale in the midweek after that, but Newcastle's in my eyes. That's the one. And it's in my Old Trafford was my big game so far this season, because I thought if we win that, whatever happens at Anfield, I was sort of all right if we took the pressure off. Do you see what I mean? We could approach that game. I'm not sure if we quite approached it correctly, but who cares now? We're over it. But now we've dropped all the points at Anfield. We dropped all the points at Newcastle last year. We've got to get something there. We've got to make some sort of correction to me. And to get the points at Anfield back, I'm looking at Newcastle, and I think that That's the big one for me. Really is big, So if we can get there and get something out of there in good health, which I think we're in much better health by then, hopefully, that's where I'm looking at. That's where my eyes are drawing towards, Elliot.
Clive, I'll stay with you just for a second. Tactically, you expect to see a lot of the same stuff we've seen so far. I mean, it's weird because we played away at Old Trafford, which is just always a tough game for us for one reason or another. We played away at Anfield, tough game for anybody, a very tactical, cagey battle. Against Leeds, we just absolutely bullied them. That's the best way I can put it. We bullied them, but I wouldn't say we were free-flowing and dynamic in the way we attacked. No. So this will be sort of an interesting chance to see, again, what we are when we're not in that real high-tension, cagey, big club rivalry match. What do you expect tactically to see from us?
Yeah, so bring it back a touch. International breaks now, I look at them completely differently, given what we seem to play a lot, every few days. We play a lot. But and so international break, you play literally 2 games in 2 weeks, right? So the players get a chance to be in their own environments, different environments, obviously sometimes further away than normal, but they get a chance to train differently and rest. And I think that's really important. International breaks now, I almost look forward to them, right? So then we come back into this, and what I'm thinking about, Elliot, to be honest, is in wide areas, we're going to have some real personality out there if Eze and Madueke play. And they're going to, for different reasons, they're going to want to show up. Really want to show up. Eze is his home debut. Madueke, fresh off being man of the match for England. Everyone's talking about him positively. He's not a shy little flower. He's going to want to show up. He's going to want to play. He's got a real ambition. I really like his attitude. And they've got character, and they're going to play. And I think that's going to be quite exciting for us to see a confident Madueke, and a new signing. And I think that will lift everybody else. I think it'll lift the central players to really go and deliver. So, and on the Forest side of things, they've got 2 defenders there, Murillo, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they are, for me, I don't think they're high-line defenders. Do you see what I mean? And so I'm wondering, I often talk about line height, because line height dictates the space by which you play in. And Forest obviously have quite a low line height normally. I think it suits Murillo. I think it suits their big centre-back, the right guy.
Milenkovic is who played against West Ham.
Thank you. That's the guy's name. Thank you, Elliot. Yeah. And they, for me, remind me so much of Leicester's back line, where it's just drop deep when they won the league and then spring out from there. That's the sort of style they have. And they're quite solid in the box. If they step out a little bit, this isn't Van der Ven and Romero who can run. This is not them. I mean, Murillo can move, right? But you do it 4 or 5 times, hamstring time, right? So he's a power defender in collision. So it'll be interesting what we do. But I don't think it matters. I think we've got the wide men. I'm a big believer in our wide men. I love the fact that we now have wide player options. Because if we're a team that doesn't attack in number 10 too much, we roll outside the block, we go to wide areas, and then we run around that player and get cutbacks and chips the back post. If that's who we are, then invest in it. That's it for me. Invest in who we are. Right now, one of the things I'm looking for development-wise, I want Noni Madueke to learn how to take corners from the right-hand side. Because if Saka's not playing, we need to develop that. These are development opportunities.
Or Odegaard can take them.
Yeah. But I think, but we might not be on the pitch. And we found out, didn't we, in the last game, and it cost. And people say, Clive, we're not a set piece. I don't care. Everything you have, bring it. Development's going to be a big part of this year for us. Player development, individual development, Ethan training on, Miles training on, Calafiori delivering after an extraordinary year post-Euros last season and coming to Arsenal and not really being able to put a consistent string of games together. We need these guys to train on. Gyokeres has got to develop on, got to sharpen up. So our future is in player development, player health, player fitness, sharpening. That's where it is, because we all have these dreams. We all look at the names on the squad sheet. We have all the depth charts in the world. If they don't develop on and they plateau like we did last year, Odegaard a good example, Martinelli maybe a good example. Ben White struggled through injury, probably overplaying when he was injured, and he plateaued a little bit. So we've got to get those up escalators back again, and that's what I want to see. And that's where I think our season is. I really do.
Yeah. Well, just on the midfield for a second, Scott, the thing with Forest is I think there is a sense in the Arsenal fan base, just sort of canvassing online sentiment, WhatsApp sentiment, things like that, is that this is a game we can kind of cruise through, right? There's no cruise through games in the Premier League. But you start to look at these teams that you expect to beat and you say, Elliot Anderson, getting celebrated for his England performances this international break. Morgan Gibbs-White, a player who I think his future is at a very big club. And now Douglas Luiz is there, a player who we wanted once upon a time if they don't go with Sangare over him. That's a midfield that can handle itself, that can cause some problems if they want to have any of the ball and play in midfield. And we regard midfield as a space we dominate. So that battle feels pretty important to me. And I'm wondering if you think that could be more of a contest than we might expect.
I mean, I still like Arsenal's chances against that midfield, but
of course,
it's definitely not a pushover midfield. And I think that is, something that I really like Elliot Anderson, and I think that maybe, the fee that they kind of paid to Newcastle, was maybe a little bit too much, but I think overall they've gotten a pretty solid player overall from that. Douglas Luiz is, I think, someone that we're familiar with, right? We spent a lot of time looking at him to be able to do it, and I think the opinion on him is that he is a good player overall for that, right? He went to, Juve. I think he was part of some really good Aston Villa teams to be able to do that. So I think that might be a player that, if there's one major change that you kind of will see from what we saw from Nuno going to Ange, I think that's probably the one that I think could be the player that's there. I think he's got a little bit more range in his passing, potentially to do that. And if they want to kind of invite pressure on, I think he's a guy that's maybe a little bit more comfortable doing that. So I think that might be the one change in the lineup that would be tied to perhaps the different tactics overall for it. And I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of see. I'm still just, I'm really, I think there's two things that I'm interested in. Well, one, how much change is there just drastically after like the 2 to 3 training sessions? And then I'm really interested in the direct matchup between Murillo and Gyokeres, because like Clive said, like Murillo is a beast of a unit, right? He is a very physical, really kind of athletic, right? Especially like, I think he's kind of bursty, right? He's really good kind of over those short distances to be able to do that. And he's going to be a full handful. And this is potentially the kind of physical matchup that, potentially worries you with Gyokeres. And can he withstand that? And I think this is one of those that I'm going to be looking at pretty closely as a kind of a barometer of, because there's a lot of teams in this middle of the Premier League that have kind of that caliber of player. And I think this is something that could potentially give you a hint of, all right, what's to come and what kind of the expectations are. Because, right, I'm not reading too much into, Konate and Van Dijk, because, you're not going to run into those guys all the time. But a Murillo level player, you are going to see that pretty often. And then if he's able to get the best of it, withstand some of the physical ballot, kind of what he did against Manchester United, where I thought he did quite well overall, right? He won some, he lost some, but I think if he can do something similar there, be able to find some space, take him into spaces that maybe he's uncomfortable with, I think that's going to be something that I'm going to be watching pretty closely here.
That's why the style of their play is going to matter a lot, because if Ange pushes that line a little bit higher up and Gyokeres can run Murillo, then Murillo's dead, I think. But if they do sit deeper and they're able to get compact and he has to just be battling away shoulder to shoulder all game, and that can be difficult. And it's where I think almost we could use a baseboard type center forward, the guy who can put his back into someone and play in the wingers against their weak wide defenders. And that's where you wish you had Kai. And it almost makes me wonder, would Mikel consider playing Merino there if he thinks it's going to be a low block type game, Clive?
Yeah, I'm not sure what game it's going to be, to be honest, but
we don't know.
I honestly, I don't know. It'll be interesting. First 5 minutes going to be interesting to see everyone's standing in the game. We'll all be watching closely and everyone will be tweeting out.
Clive, I hope we're seeing Ange on the touchline waving his players up the pitch. That if we see that, I'm going to feel a lot better.
But I just heard you talk about Gyokeres, and Scott was spot on there. And if I was ever speaking to him, I'd actually say to him, make it a non-contact game. Don't get involved with these shoulders right now. Just concentrate on your movement and your angles and your timing. Make it non-contact. Start to move them around. And then, because he's a player, I think his strength is actually repeat sprints and to keep going relentlessly. So play the long game. Keep moving. Wear them down. Then get more physical as the game goes on. But movement, understanding your movements, making movements, moving them around, I think that's really important for us. I think with Eze, just watching with everyone seeing it, and I'm not the only person to say this, but obviously watching him with Mateta, he likes to pass to somebody that sprints away from him, shows his shorts. So do that. Odegaard likes runners. So Madueke's got to go the other direction. Do you see what I mean? It has to go the other direction. So that constant moving, I think, is key. We mustn't get fixated. I mean, when I saw Gyokeres put Elliot on the floor, I thought he's going to be fine this season. As soon as he finds Elliot, because Elliot's massive. So if you can do that, you're going to be fine. Konate couldn't really move him, right? He was on the edge, Konate, but we couldn't really move him. If we had Kai in that game and you had 2 centre forwards to play against, I think we'd have done him, but we couldn't quite move. He wasn't quite fit enough. But don't focus on that. Focus on movement and being available for the passes. That'll be my message. Because, mate, his movement is good and his shooting is really good. We just haven't seen enough of it yet.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about after this game. And one of the fun things about having such a big squad with so much talent is we get to see Eze, see how he fits in. We get to see Gyokeres again in a game where we should be more the dominant force in it. But maybe we see Ethan, maybe we see Max, maybe we see some of the different fullback options. Ben White was in training. There's changes we can make at fullback. Nkapie's here now. Calafiori's been great. Mazuaskelly is still here. By the way, Leo still exists. Martinelli still exists. There is always the outside chance Saka or Saliba are fit. I don't expect them to be fit for this game. So lots and lots of options of ways we can set up, and it'll be interesting to see. Norgard's back in training, so someone that we can alternate. And if we do have a lead late, maybe we do see him come in for Zubamendi, who I think we need to be a little bit cautious about him playing all the minutes all the time. So some very, very fun things to analyze. And of course, at full time, we'll have the instant reaction over on Patreon and Apple where you can watch us. And Clive will give his, I love what Clive does. Clive gives us his halftime and his full-time thoughts from the ground, which is really cool because it's as instant as it gets. And we do a live stream, but also recording with a full breakdown. We do headlines, stock rising, stock falling from the game. So you can join us for that. Last thought here, Clive, I'll stay with you just for a second. Every game is important, and you do fall into this narrative trap of being like, well, this is an important run. And then you kind of have to be like, well, what's not an important run? You know what I mean? What would be an example of not important run? But right now, from now to the international break, home to Forest, away to Athletic Club, home to City, away to Port Vale, away to Newcastle, home to Olympiacos, home to West Ham. And as I look at that, I think we've gotten a bit lucky that it's Port Vale away between City and United, that we have the timing advantage that Scott referenced in our Champions League tie, and then Olympiacos at home between Newcastle away and West Ham. All of those things feel manageable from a squad standpoint and maybe an ability to be a little different, but I do recognize that we have a bad history with Olympiacos, so that's one to rectify. Do you have a number in mind? Is this simple? It's 12 points and it has to be 12 points and that's all there is to it. What's your take on this run and how crucial it is for us overall?
This first phase of the season, for me, just stay in contact. I think Liverpool are really good front runners. I think when they won the titles both times, they've done it from the front. I think they find the side to their badge when they're in the lead. They remember who they are and they get comfortable with it. I think they manage distress better than some. But just particularly in the media narrative world, they handle it well. They protect their club and their players and their city with everything they've got, and they don't break apart. Well, every fan group breaks apart, but it doesn't feel that visible to me. And so we want to stay close to them because one thing from last season, we just didn't pressure them enough. And I don't think they're great under pressure, but we never got to see it. The one time they nearly cracked Everton in the away game at Goodison when they got the last minute equaliser, they were starting to crack. I think we messed up the next game and that was that. They don't do well when people are close, but we've got to stay close. That's really key. And having 3 wins from 3 while not playing well and adding Isak, I watched these training videos. It's not too encouraging, Elliot. He was literally finishing with his eyes shut, right? So it was incredible. So and so we have to deal with that. So just staying close is key. But like I say, Newcastle one in my mind. Just keep it close. Keep it close. But don't get any more injuries because we're sitting there, 5-0 home win. Sun is shining. New signing walks on the pitch. 15-year-old playing, 18-year-old playing in midfield. And we lose our best player and lose our captain. And I don't care what happens. That cost us in Anfield, right? If them two playing Anfield, we don't lose that game. It's clear to me we don't lose that game. So we just need our people on the pitch. That's the key thing. Can we just get 3 points and not have to give something back? Do you know what I mean? That's what I want to see. Just take the 3 points and walk away and go to the pub.
And we're going to be in another one of those really, really interesting moments at the end of this run before the next international break. So this international break kicked off with Arsenal, Liverpool, the two title rivals going head to head, and all the narrative based on that result. The next international break kicks off with Liverpool versus Chelsea. And if Chelsea stay in contact over this period, because they are currently sitting second, that's going to be the narrative discussion based on the outcome there. And Liverpool have a bit of a tricky run because they go into that game. They have Palace away, Galatasaray away, which even if you don't think that's a tough game, they go to Turkey, it's a tough environment, to Chelsea away. Okay? If we can navigate this period, maybe there's a banana skin there for Liverpool. I mean, they also have Everton and Burnley in this run, but Everton, even though it's at Anfield, that's a war, right? That's an attritional game for them, even if they want to win it comfortably. So this will be a period where I think we come through it, and the narrative will be set, first of all, on Chelsea. Are Chelsea in the title race, right? Because if they beat Liverpool at Stamford Bridge, that's going to be the narrative. Or they're going to fall away. They're going to lose to Liverpool or, not get the points against Liverpool, and they're pretenders. But for us, I think we have to, as Clive says, be in striking distance. It's a long season, and there are going to be people listening to this saying, we don't have to do anything. It's going to be September. And I get that. I think we want a happy home. We want a quiet environment. We don't want too much tumult around our group. And as long as we're in contact, as long as we're close, that's fine. If we slip away and we have a lot to catch up, it just gets a little more stressful and anxious, and none of us need that in our life. So, Scott, final thoughts on this run, what we need from it, what you expect from it?
I find these kinds of questions really interesting. And one of the things that I wanted to do to be able to better kind of answer this, what is it that we're actually targeting here? What is realistic expectations, and how does that change the ramifications for the title hunt that we're in? So I did make some tweaks to be able to give myself more information. So I run a simulation, twice a week, and, it goes through all that stuff. And so I put some more granularity to see how the individual matches change things. So going through to the next international break, when Arsenal win the title, we get somewhere between 8 and 9 points from this run.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's pretty. Okay. I think that's pretty realistic, right?
That's less though. I think that's great to hear, Scott, because I think if we got 8 points from this run, I think you'd hear a lot of frustration.
2 wins and 2 draws. I think that's it depends on again who the draws are to, right? If it's a draw to City, draw to Newcastle, I think we're okay with that. We take it. But, if we drop points somewhere else, that's probably, again, the sequencing of things matters. But I think 3 wins is really my target here. Come into this 15 points. I think we're going to be in really good shape to be able to do it. And yeah, I think this is a situation where you're going to learn a lot about Chelsea. You're going to learn a lot about Liverpool, because this is the tough run for them as well overall. So yeah, I think you're right. Stay within touching distance. 8-9 points is where I'm targeting.
Yeah, that's what I like about using the data, right? Because what you're saying is you ran the simulation 10,000 times, and in the simulations where we win the title, we needed 8 to 9 points in this run.
That's
whereas,
the average, right? There's obviously,
right,
more is better, but
more helps, of course, yeah. But I think that's interesting because, again, this is just my perception. I think if we drop any points, the anxiety is going to be through the roof. I just don't think that we may just not have the constitution right now for the title race. We need to develop it. But that's why I think the Forest game feels so pivotal in a way, because I don't know that anyone totally knows who we are yet. And that's a byproduct also playing without Saka and playing without Odegaard and Saliba missing for half a game. And we're still going to have some of that. But Eze not having been really integrated, I think people want to see it now. They want to see Gyokeres sprinting away from Forest defenders and slotting. They want to see Eze dripping some magic on the ball and finding a pass no one saw, or scoring from 19 yards with a beautiful curler. I watched Martinelli against, was it Chile, I think?
Yeah.
And he had one really bad move to the outside that looked very much like an Arsenal move where he ran it out for a corner. He was lucky to get the corner. But then he had a good move where he split defenders and shot just past the near post. But that move was when he went to his stronger foot. And as we watched in the Liverpool rewatch, I just feel like for some reason he's not going to the inside. He's not going to his stronger foot as much. And so having a left winger who wants to get it on his right and do something with it, I think that's going to change the angles for some of our runners, for Rice, for Gyokeres. It'll be fun to see. I am so excited for this game, though, because I think that we are very, very good, and people haven't totally bought into that. I think the scars of last season, playing with so many players missing, has undermined the degree to which we trust the group we have. I think we have a lot of talent. We're very deep, and we're built to go the distance. And the Leeds game was actually encouraging to me in the one respect that, no, we didn't play scintillating, flowing football the whole way through. But even still, they could not last the marathon of the match with us. We bullied them into submission. And without even playing it in fifth gear, it was 5-0. And I think we have a unique ability through set pieces, through our midfield power, through our running power to just wear teams to dust. That first half against Liverpool, our press, even against one of the best teams in the league, the best team potentially, they were really, really struggling to live with it. And I don't think Forest have a prayer, if they're going to try to play through us, of living with it. And I hope they do try that. So we'll see. We'll have Friday Night Clive tomorrow. We'll have an instant reaction to that game. And then it's marathon time. I'm talking instant reactions 3 days a week. Can there be 3 games in a week? You decide. I'm talking rewatches. We're talking about power rankings episodes. We're going to have opposition guests on sometimes, not for the teams we really hate. We're going to have all kinds of fun stuff. Maybe Stats Guy and Civilian. If Paul and Scott get off their butts and do one of those, we'll have all kinds of fun stuff. We'd love to have you there. AV50 is the code, and you can get it for a couple of quid the first month and see what you think. Okay, let's leave it there. Scott, this was a blast. Thanks for coming on, and we'll be talking to you soon, I have no doubt.
Yeah, yeehaw. I'm ready to strap in.
Okay. In is the critical word there. You give a different word there, and we've got a whole different kind of party that we're throwing. Clive, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm playing the Paul role today. My name's Elliot Smith. We love you, and we will absolutely talk to you after Arsenal 10, Forest 0.